As a further, I call Paul Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So we've got the valedictories coming this afternoon, and excellent national members of Parliament. I am staying, Mr. Prime Minister. We've got Cam Calder, we've got Hayes, King, Tremaine and Wilkinson, all who have made great contributions. And it's true that John Hayes has been the most difficult to handle on the Finance and Expenditure Committee, much harder than any of the opposition members, but nevertheless he's made a great contribution. And I noticed the players from the parliamentary rugby side here to support Cam Calder, and I put my hand out to you. Diversity of background. Diversity of background is the strength of the National Party. And these people who are giving their valedictories today are capable people who have other options to go to once they've made their contribution in Parliament, and they don't have to hang around well past their use-by date. In their second to last week of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, they will be reflecting on their contribution. And of course there will be many other people in this chamber here today who are in their second to last week of Parliament, but they don't know it yet, Mr. Speaker. And the people are sovereign, and it could befall any of us. But I fear some of our colleagues on the other side of the House won't get a chance to deliver their valedictory. Mr. Muldoon used to say that so-and-so was a hard old dog to get off the porch, Mr. Speaker, and that's true of Winston Peters, there's no doubt. But who knows if him and his interesting collection will be back after the election. Including that fellow with the 2 letterboxes, Mr. Speaker. But I can think of any of... I worry about my members on the other side in the Labour Party. I worry about my cousin Moana Mackie. I worry about Clayton Cosgrove, my good friend. And all of them are in a great deal of trouble when it comes to the election. Even David Parker, who I've worked with in a collegial manner in the Finance and Expenditure Committee. Anybody on the Labour Party list has something to worry about. Mr. Speaker, I've been very busy in the Epsom electorate, working hard to build up the party vote. Like every other candidate in this party, I'm working to lift the party vote, because that's the one that makes a difference, Mr. Speaker. And I'd just like to say to Labor to rein in that guy that lives in Parnell who keeps pinching my signs. Mr. Speaker, I know who he is. And I hear, when I'm on the doorsteps in Epsom, I hear deep concern about the potential for things to go wrong if a government comprising Annette Sykes, John Minto, Lila Hare, David Cunliffe, Materia Ture, Russell Norman, Winston Peters veer off in all sorts of directions after this election. Mr. Speaker, they're very concerned about the prospect of Asanati Loli Taylor overseeing the Reserve Bank, Mr. Speaker. They're terrified of John Minto being the Treaty Negotiations Minister, and Mr. Speaker, Materia Ture, who said in this House that work is a trap, Mr. Speaker, and it doesn't pay enough, and therefore people shouldn't bother. Just imagine if she was in charge of welfare. It's all too terrible to contemplate, Mr. Speaker. Why, when this country is heading in the right direction, guided by a strong, stable, united and sensible government, when there's so much work to be done, would anybody put it all at risk by leaping into the unknown with this motley crew? Mr. Speaker, how can the country put their trust in David Cunliffe and the team when they can't even organise a decent picture of him for the soft profile piece in the Dominion Post this morning? Did they not see that the photo that they sent to the Dominion Post had him squatting beside a rabbit in shorts that were clearly far too small and inadequate for the task? And I encourage you to have a look at that. That's what worries people, Mr. Speaker. That's what worries people. The Labour prescription is bad enough. They're overturning the Reserve Bank consensus. They're slapping a new tax on every productive business in this country. And they're effectively nationalising the electricity sector. That's bad enough. But if they scraped back into power, they wouldn't get to dictate what happens in this country. They'd have to give something to the Greens. Imagine what they would demand aside from their massive carbon tax, aside from making farmers uncompetitive. They'd have to, what would they give to Hone Harawira? They'd have to free Mr. .com. They'd have to give free stuff to everybody, and that is why this country would be in a terrible state, Mr. Speaker. I'm very proud of the record of this government over the past 6 years, and fundamentally it's been about working to create an environment in which New Zealanders can thrive, and will only do well and will only be in the position to afford all the sorts of things that we value: quality healthcare, superannuation in old age, world-class education and support for the vulnerable if we have, Mr. Speaker, if we have an internationally competitive economy. And of course, What is internationally competitive is a moving target, and it requires constant improvement, not just by exporters but throughout the economy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Members, this debate is concluded. The Business Committee has determined that the congratulatory messages following each member's valedictories will be held at the end. So there are a number of valedictories today, and I ask that we move from member to member with their valedictories and we make our congratulatory messages right at the end. There will be a bell at 2 minutes to go.
Mr. Speaker.
In accordance with the determination of the Business Committee, I call Dr Cam Calder to make his valedictory statement.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. 6 years ago, when I came into Parliament,